Hi, my name is Elise and I'm the partner manager here at EzzyBills. And today we're going to go through our EzzyBills and Cin7 Core integration. Now, this was originally given as a live webinar with our partner Rob King from Integration Kings, but unfortunately we did have a bit of a technical glitch and the recording was not saved. So we're just going to go through the slides today so that you can have an overview of the presentation and see the core functionality of this very cool integration. And like I sort of alluded to a minute ago, this is partnered with Rob King from Integration Kings, and he was part of the live webinar, but unfortunately is not here now as part of the recording. So the topics we're going to cover is an introduction to automation, and we're just going to chat a little bit more about the challenges that businesses face and the importance of implementing products such as EzzyBills. And in the original webinar, this was something that Rob really spoke a lot about, and how working specifically with inventory businesses, he really sees that people spend so much time and so much money, in many cases, 1, 2, even 3 full-time staff members, primarily with the job of importing purchase orders, importing sales invoices, importing supplier invoice, and sort of cleaning up that process, building automation, and really allowing those team members to work on more productive tasks in a business is really helpful, not only for the business, not only for the budget, but also for the individual staff members that can be sort of doing more effective work with their time. We're going to speak about the benefits of the integration and just how to set up EzzyBills and do a basic setup of EzzyBills and Cin7 Core. We'll chat through when can we use EzzyBills and some of the different use cases that we're seeing our clients use this integration with. We'll chat about best practices for using the integration. We'll chat about some other features that you can take advantage of when using EzzyBills that go sort of beyond the Cin7 integration. And then we'll spend a couple of minutes at the end chatting about support and next steps. And apologies, because this is not the original event, we probably won't have any Q&A. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, there's a lot of benefits of using the EzzyBills and Integration Kings. Sorry, I'm using the EzzyBills and Cin7 Core integration, and both EzzyBills and the team at Integration Kings can help you with that setup. So you can eliminate manual data entry completely, and that really helps, like I said, with allowing staff to utilize their time in other places, but also allows you to decrease the risk. You can push straight through to Cin7 Core and to Xero, and you've got your data instantly. So instead of waiting for your team member to sort of go through the pile of papers that are sitting on their desk to get input, within a few seconds, you've got that data available to sort of track your POs, your stock, your expenses. And then once you've got really good data, you can integrate some of the other features that EzzyBills has. So you've got your multi-level approval workflows, and all sorts of other bits and pieces that can be dragged and dropped into our workflows to sort of automate things like sale orders, purchase orders, credit notes, credit card receipts, and invoices. So we sort of process the whole suite of different document types. And like I said, it can all work with the different types of workflows and the different types of approvals for each of those types of documents. So in terms of the setup, it's super straightforward. You just have to go to our website, ezzybills.com, and there's a button that says 14-day free trial. You want to click on that, and then there's a drop down at the bottom that says integrate with Cin7 Core. So you want to set that up, and then once you set that up, you'll have a dashboard that looks something like this. And then basically it's just a simple API connection to connect your EzzyBills account with your Cin7 Core account. So if you go into settings, if you go into apps and Cin7 Core, I'm obviously connected already, but if you weren't connected already, there would be a button that said connect. And in order to do that, you've got to grab API keys from Cin7 directly. So if you go into Cin7 and you click on the integration lab, then you want to click on API integration, and then you want to set up a new API integration. You want to call it EzzyBills. You can see I've set up a few of these, and you want to create it, and then we will provide you with an API key that you can use to connect. So I'm just going to make sure that API key is copied. And in this case, the account ID would stay the same. So your Cin7 account ID is always the same, but every time you create a new API, there's a new API key that's generated. So in this case, because I've generated that new API, in order for my integration to work, I will have to update the key. So if you're doing it for the first time, you would put in the application ID and the key, save it, and then you can see here it's connected. And if you need a test connection, you can just test the connection, and you can see that you're connected not only to Cin7, but the specific location. So if you did have a multi-entity instance of Cin7, you would see the exact account that you're connected with, and you could set up a multi-entity EzzyBills account as well. So it's simple as that. You're connected and ready to go. And if you did want to connect with Xero as well, it's the same thing. You just click on the Xero box. There'll be a connect button if you're not already connected. And that one's even simpler. You just click on connect. We'll ask you a permission question and we will automatically connect to Xero. And then again, you can easily attach the connection. So there's some sort of error there. We'll deal with that later. The focus really now is on the Cin7 piece primarily. Okay, so the next sort of section that we're going to talk about is when can I use EzzyBills? So what are the different use cases that we can use EzzyBills with the Cin7 integration? So the first case would be if there's no purchase order that's been created in Cin7. And so in that case, because we're primarily a purchase order matching integration, with Cin7 Core, we do need a purchase order. So what we've created is a purchase order creation workflow or email address, whatever you want to call it, where EzzyBills can actually take a purchase order, and that can be a purchase order that was generated in an external system, or a purchase order that was generated by a client or a supplier, or generated in your own purchase order creator. Whatever it is, you can take that purchase order and push it through into Cin7 using EzzyBills to create a purchase order. So the way you would do it on the dashboard is, as a default, we do assume things are supplier invoices. So if we wanted to create a purchase order, we could do one of two things. You could click on Advanced Upload, Document Type, and Purchase Order, and you can drag and drop into that gray box at the bottom. And because we've selected that purchase order button, then we will know that what is below is a purchase order, and therefore treat it as such in Cin7. And there's also an email address. So we've got also email addresses for the different types of documents. So in this case, it would be ezzydear.purchase@ezzybills.com, and that would tell Cin7 that it's a purchase order, and you can use that to create the purchase order. And if you don't have a purchase order document, you can do what I do, and we'll probably demo in a few minutes, which is a bit cheeky, but you can actually just take the invoice, as long as there's a purchase order, create the purchase order, and then use the invoice to receipt in that purchase order. The next case is if there's a blind purchase order created. So if you've got a blind purchase order, we can receipt into that as well. So that would be a case where you've got the purchase order with the supplier and the sort of basic header information, but you don't have those line item details. And so what we do in those cases when we receive the invoice to match against a blind purchase order is we actually fill in those lines for you. So that can be really helpful to avoid having to fill in those lines manually if your purchase order doesn't already have them. Now, case 3 is probably the most common use case and probably what is going to be happening in the majority of cases, where you've got your purchase order, it's already created with the lines, and you get your supplier invoice and you want it to match against the lines. And that's exactly what we'll do. So we get the purchase order in with the lines, we will match against that. We get the invoice in with the lines and we'll match against that original purchase order in Cin7. We do allow multiple invoices for one purchase order. So let's say you've ordered 5 t-shirts, 3 come through and 2 are on back order. We will allow you to receipt multiple invoices to one purchase order. And when importing the data, we look at the invoice as the source of truth. So if the purchase order says the t-shirt cost $5 and the invoice says it costs $5.75, when we're importing that draft invoice, we will use the information on the invoice as the source of truth. Case 4 is importing sales invoices, and this is actually something that seems to be more and more common lately. I've got a lot of people asking me about sale invoices, and it seems to be that in a lot of workflows there is a little bit of a gap in the automation with the sales invoices, because you've got your e-commerce site, you've got your sales invoices being generated, and often there is somebody manually keying those into Cin7. So just like I showed you with the purchase order workflow, we've also got a sale invoice alias that you can either use by email or by drag and drop. So you've got this easydeer.sale at ezzybills.com, and just like the purchase one that I showed you a couple of minutes ago, if you send your sale invoice to that email address, we will create a sale order in Cin7 for you. The same thing on the dashboard with the advanced upload document type. You can also select sale, and we'll create a sale order that way as well. And then the fifth case is export to Xero. And like I said in the slide, this would be with or without Cin7. So the first use case would be an inventory related expense. You export into Cin7, and then you'd like a copy of that to go through to Xero as well, so you can pay your creditors. And then the second use case is if you've got an overhead expense, let's say for your rent or for your accountants, which is a very important expense, and you want that to go straight through to Xero, we could have a separate workflow for that as well. So we'll just jump into our workflows just so you can see what they do. So I guess this is a little bit intimidating in terms of the number of workflows that I've got set up. But for the most part, if we're just doing a basic setup, you would have two workflows. You would have a Dear PO check workflow like I have there, and then you'd have a Xero workflow, and those can be customized, and like you can see, there's all sorts of other bits and pieces and customizations that we can do. But generally speaking, it would be two workflows, a Dear workflow and a Xero workflow. And then for each document, you would choose either via email or via drag and drop or via an AP review process before it goes through to either of those systems, which of those workflows the document needs to go through. So I think now might be a good time to take a quick break and just go through a short demo just to show you what that would look like. So I think what we'll do is we will upload a purchase order. So we will choose purchase orders. We will choose files to drag and drop. We will grab that. We will let it go through. We should see in a couple of seconds that should start processing. We can see now that it's in progress. Just some sort of quick tips in terms of setting up your account. So in the settings menu, we recommend putting your time zone in. And this, I guess, is a great section for me to just do that. We've got a Canberra, Melbourne, and Sydney time zone, and obviously if you're in a different part of the country or a different part of the world, you'll choose the appropriate time zone. And that basically tells us your location in terms of things like approval workflows. So if you've got an approver who's approving invoices, we will use the time zone that's set in your account in terms of the date and time stamp for the approval workflows. And we also recommend putting in your ABN or GST number and your company name. And what that does is it just helps act as an exclusion. So when we see an invoice, we see two sets of data on the invoice. And we see your details and your supplier's details. And we just want to make sure that we don't confuse your business with your supplier's business. And we're actually pulling through your supplier's details. So if we jump back to the dashboard, we can see that we've successfully exported that document as a purchase order into Cin7. We created purchase order number 21 because the last purchase order created was 20. And we've got a link here that takes us right into Dear. So we can go in, we can see that purchase order was created. We can see the line item details have all come through. We can see that the original file is attached. And we've got the ability to then go in and authorize that purchase order. We can push it through as authorized to start with, but I generally recommend when you're just starting out and testing the software, better to keep it in a draft state and review and authorize manually. But down the track, we definitely can change the settings so it comes through directly as authorized. So that's basically how it works and what it looks like. And then pushing through the invoice would be the same thing. It would push through, receipt the purchase order, and give you all of the details and the source document attached. Okay, so just in terms of sort of high level best practices, and a lot of this has really come from working with a lot of clients with different types of businesses, different size businesses, and sort of just wanting to share some things that I find make really successful sort of implementation and trial process. So I think mapping out your workflow requirements first is really key. So understanding, what you want, how you want to achieve it makes it much easier for my team, Rob's team, or your team internally to sort of translate into tech makes it really helpful. So I'll sometimes talk to clients and I'll say, well, what does your approval process look like in your business? And they'll say, well, I don't know, it's very haphazard, and sometimes we get approvals and sometimes we don't, and it's hard to sort of translate that to a piece of tech. And so businesses that come to me and say, here's our delegated authority chart, and if it's over $1,000 it goes to this person, and $5,000 it goes to this person, and this supplier goes to this person. Super easy for me to then translate that into a workflow in EzzyBills. Ensure your data is updated in both systems. Again, you obviously want to make sure data is accurate, and if you were to check either system, EzzyBills or Xero or Cin7, you want to make sure you've got accurate and up-to-date data. So having things like ABN numbers, suppliers, default GL codes, default terms, currency if they're foreign suppliers, again, updated in your systems helps to really make sure that you're getting the most out of the systems. You want to test sample invoices. Obviously, we offer a trial, so you can sign up for a trial, no obligation, and test different documents, test, your most common suppliers, test the kinds of documents you're getting on a regular basis to see how they're coming through. Have a chat with the team. I find it's best in these kinds of situations to have at least two people involved in the testing and implementation stage. I find it's helpful to have one person who's sort of on the AP team in terms of the hands-on data entry piece, and one person who's the accountant or the CFO or the finance manager, and have those two types of people involved, because I find there's some things that are really key that somebody who's a little bit higher level and involved in the strategy can really think through and plan. And there's other things that the person who's really managing the day-to-day will really understand the detail and the nuance of what's happening. Obviously monitor and optimize. So I find with EzzyBills in general, and especially with this integration, there's so many different bits and pieces, and the workflow, like I mentioned, is really modular. So you can always add down the track. Better to sort of start with the basics, get the processes right, and then we can sort of add in additional bits and pieces. And like I sort of alluded to earlier, involve people in sort of meetings and discussions. And the more that you feel like people in the team are included sort of in the decision-making process, hopefully they'll also feel really bought in when it actually comes to sort of rolling out the tech and using the tech, because it can be a bit of an adjustment or a change if it's sort of a manual process of, dropping expense claims on the bookkeeper's desk to sort of moving to having an app and taking photos. But involving people in the process usually sort of minimizes the resistance around those kinds of things. So automating your app with other EzzyBills features. And so a lot of these things I've kind of alluded to over the past couple of slides. So with all of our integrations and, including the Cin7 integration, we can have multi-level approval workflows set up. So just to give you an idea of what those can look like, we've got a series of approval rules that can be sort of baked in and built into the workflows. So these can be based on dollar value, they can be based on supplier, they can be based on approval limits, they can be based on who a previous approver was, and they can be based on all sorts of other things that are not sort of built into this list. So you can basically have your approvals based on anything, because if you do want them to be based on something not in that list, we can have an AI that can basically build out a rule for you and build out that condition for you. Price checking, this is one that I think with inventory-based businesses, it's really a critical feature and something that I think is pretty cool. So if you send a CSV of your prices, and we can put that into Cin7, then when you get an invoice from that supplier, we can automatically check against those prices and notify you of any discrepancies. And so that's a really good way with minimal effort to find out if your invoice prices are not matching your prices in Cin7, and either update your prices in Cin7 if the prices have increased, or go back to the supplier and say you've been overcharged, or whatever that process is for you to sort that out. We can do batching. So obviously, as businesses grow, the number of invoices coming through grows, the number of approvers grows. And so we can batch at any stage of the approval workflow. And so that'll just minimize the kind of paperwork and multiple emails that people are getting. And I've also mentioned this briefly as our AI tasks. And for me, this is probably one of the coolest parts of the product, is that if something doesn't exist, we can build it super easily with an AI task. So you've got some examples here of things that we can do. One of the examples that I like to give is if you've got a supplier that charges a $15 delivery fee, but they don't actually have that $15 delivery fee on every invoice, we can build a task that just says, if the supplier is X, then add a $15 delivery fee, and that will automatically be added to your invoice every time you get an invoice from that supplier, and you'll have that data automatically in Cin7 and in Xero if relevant. Okay, so that is sort of it at a higher level. In terms of next steps, if you think this is something that could be relevant for your business, set up a free trial. Like I think I mentioned earlier, it's 2 weeks, no obligation. You just go to our website, click on free trial. We'll automatically build the sort of basic PO matching workflow. But if you do want other workflows set up with AI tasks or approvals or any of those bits and pieces, price checking, you're welcome to give it a go yourself. We've got documentation on our website. You're also welcome to get in touch with our team, who'd be happy to help. Obviously, you want to make sure you do some testing and make sure that you're happy with the product and what it's doing and how the data is coming through. Share your feedback with us. Sometimes things don't always come through 100%. We've got what's called default extraction, which would be when you just upload a bill. That would be how it comes through by default. But we do also have what we call custom extraction, and this is where our team sort of helps map the document and build some rules around what fields are where and what needs to be extracted from where. And so that's definitely something that we can help with common suppliers if the formats are a little bit more challenging for the system to read by default. And once everything is done and implemented, then hopefully you'll be able to enjoy your weekends at the beach instead of entering data. So thanks so much for listening. Hopefully this provided a bit of an overview in terms of EzzyBills and Cin7 and the integration. Feel free to sign up for a free trial. Feel free to get in touch with our team. Feel free to get in touch with Rob and his team at Integration Kings. And we look forward to speaking to you soon.